The Bitcoin Group, the American original, filmed in front of a live studio audience for over the last 10 seconds, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists, Chris Ellis from Feathercoin, Derek J. Freeman from Peace News Now, Davi Barker from ShinyBadges.com, Blake Anderson from Facebook.com/GotBlake, Megan Lords from Bitcoin Not Bombs, Will Pangman from Bitcoin Milwaukee, and I'm Thomas Hunt from Mad Bitcoins. All right. Issue 1. Dogecoin founder quits. Calls community cult-like. Jackson Palmer, the founder of Dogecoin, has quit the struggling coin after a disagreement with John Green from Moolah.io over how to handle Ultra Pro, manufacturer of baseball card sleeves, trademarking the word Doge to make binders, notepads, and more, featuring the cute canine. Jackson thinks it's fine, but Green thinks it's not acceptable. Because of this disagreement, Jackson Palmer has quit Dogecoin. Is this the beginning of the end for the plucky cryptocurrency? Chris J.
Yeah, I think this is really, really sad if it's true. I've just been looking through Jackson Palmer's Twitter. It sounds like he's claiming that he's been misquoted, so I don't want to speak out of turn, but if it is true that he described his own community as cult-like, then he really needs to think about what motivated him to create the movement in the first place. It will be really interesting to see what projects he does again in the future as well, but I'm a really big fan of all community-driven currencies. That was the whole point. Nobody asked for their currencies to be innovative. They asked them to be relevant, stable, and to hold their price over time. So I look forward to hearing any kind of response that you might have formally in the future.
I am so sad to hear that this could be the end of Doge. I wouldn't want that at all, because the Doge community, as Chris mentioned, has been one of the bedrocks of the cryptocurrency world, and they've done so much for the promotion of cryptocurrencies and injected a lot of fun into the community as well. So I would hope that even though the community may be accurately described as cult-like, that shouldn't be a turnoff. That's not terrible. They have a happy cult, and they're productive too. So ain't nothing wrong with that.
I think Bitcoin has already proven that cryptocurrencies don't need strong leaders. And so I think Doge is resilient. I think it will continue on. I think where you cut off one Doge, two will grow in its place. And I think that the idea of copyrighting the Doge is absurd, because like the very nature of memes is that like someone somewhere has already heard of it by the time you've heard of it. So no one can really like claim to be the creator, or at least not the person who's claiming to copyright it. So that strikes me as an absurd idea, and doesn't scare me at all. So go Doge.
I have a little bit of mixed feelings. If he didn't say it, then I think that, that it's fine. But if he did say it, I think there's something called fiduciary responsibility and an obligation to various people that you've told to invest in something, that it was going to the moon. So I think that that's very serious. And before I, go into really kind of criticizing that statement, I would want to make sure that he really did say it. I've been kind of out of my tech network, so I haven't had a lot of chance to do a lot of research on these issues. But I was very upset when I heard.
Yeah, being out here in the woods kind of keeps you a little insulated, so some of these current events are very fresh for all of us here, but it is sad if it's true that this was said. I certainly think Doge is resilient enough, and the community, as Davi pointed out, doesn't need any strong figurehead type leaders. There should be dozens, if not hundreds or thousands of those types of folks. That's what makes all of these crypto coin communities so strong, and communities like the Free State Project and so on. So, it'll be interesting to see what comes out. If he's misquoted, then that's a shame. But if it is something he actually said, that's a very immature way to leave a huge project that you founded and nurtured. So, I'd like to think, from what I know of Jackson Palmer, he's really bright and smart and optimistic from everything I've heard and learned about him. So, hopefully we learn that this was all just a misunderstanding, and it's just time for him to leave the community as a leader.
So I really like the enthusiasm of the Doge community, and this is kind of sad news. I need a little more clarification on the quote before I, have an opinion about that. If it's something he did say, maybe there's some bitterness about this whole patent, battle that he's going through, which it is kind of a ridiculous thing to try to patent a meme. I mean, yeah. I just picture that as extremely hard to enforce since Doge is on everything now and in so many different ways, has been remixed in so many ways that I think that's going to be really hard to enforce. So yeah, I want to wait on clarification whether or not he actually said that quote, because that is a pretty incendiary quote.
Can I just add that actually 2 days ago, Jackson did say that he's not leaving altogether. He's mostly just staying away from the Reddit. So I kind of watch this space.
Yeah. Exit question. Should Dogecoin stand by and allow Ultra Pro to trademark the word Doge?
No, you can't trademark a meme. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely not.
He didn't come up with Doge. Doge is a strong bad reference. Like that's I don't. It strikes me as a kind of mental disorder. He would even think that he could copyright the word Doge.
We need a lot more intellectual property. It's the only way to go towards a nice, productive future. We need to copyright not just Doge, but a whole bunch of other memes and then troll everybody that's ever used them and put them in prison for the betterment of all mankind.
Should the community stand by, as implying that they would somehow resist this normal type of procedure that everything seems to follow through? If you file the right paperwork, I kind of think they should stand by. Who cares, right? I mean, just keep doing your thing. Again, it sounds unenforceable.
Yes, it's a really ridiculous thing. If you're going to patent Doge, you should patent Grumpy Cat too, or something.
Issue 2, Middle East Investment Bank. Could Bitcoin ignite regional e-commerce? The Kuwaiti Financial Center, also known as Marquez, has published a new report entitled Disruptive Technology, Bitcoin's Currency Reinvented, that concludes that despite the risks, if properly nurtured, cryptocurrency can help e-commerce take off in a big way. Micropayments and cashless payment technologies would make it easier for people to carry on just their money just on their smartphone and pay for it. This is a bank, now on our side. Is it just another early adopter or the beginning of a trend?
People don't need banks, all they need is a mobile phone and open source software. And this is completely disintermediating. Every time one of these banks comes out with a statement like this, I get really, really curious, because all they're really interested in doing is put themselves between every economic transaction you want to have. They just want that cut. So I don't know absolutely everything about this story, but it sounds like just another middleman wanting his take.
I am surprised to hear you say that, Chris. Yeah, sure they want just a little bit of their cut, but they are going to be making it easier for people to transact in these cryptocurrencies. And of course it's happening outside the U.S., no surprise, because it's so complicated for anyone to even get a Bitcoin ATM in the U.S. So all the innovation is coming from where? The Middle East.
I find it interesting that the word in the headline is Middle East, as if like Kuwait is indistinguishable from every other country in the Middle East. So, like Kuwait has a very unique history in the Middle East, and like the fact that they have been sort of the victims of all sorts of like wars between their neighbors all of these years. It makes sense that they would want to be separatist economically. So like I don't think that we can judge I would want to do more research on the current socio-political situation in Kuwait, but I don't think that we can judge a statement by a bank in Kuwait the way that we would judge the same statement by a bank in the United States, because they're under a completely different set of economic and political pressures.
I have a little bit of background with various financial institutions, and I feel like what's probably happening is this bank, similarly to the way that Chase, or who was it that did the other thing about friction, and yeah, Chase. So I think what they're doing when they get these positive metrics for their bank is they're trying to leverage that in talks with the government in order to engender regulatory capture and to try to get as much of the control of the system under their control as they can, and then quash competition. That's not very effective in this space, so it's kind of funny to me when they let the cat out of the bag to do this. So I'm just tickled by the entire thing. But I do hope that Kuwait can find more monetary independence, that it will work for them.
Yeah, I think if there are subservient banks, subservient in the sense that they're, subjugated by larger, more central institutions, more global financial institutions, that they should certainly seek solutions that make their business practices cheaper, more efficient, faster, better for their customers. That's good business practice. So I don't really see a problem with this. I really like to hear mainstreaming kinds of news, and it just advances the discussion. I mean, again, as Derek pointed out, this is happening in the Middle East, when it could be happening, let's say, in Switzerland or, some more forward-thinking, traditionally forward-thinking financial places in the world. So it is very interesting, and it'll bring us closer to mainstream.
Yeah, I am wondering how many people have heard of Bitcoin in Kuwait, and maybe this could be a way for them to find out what it is, so they don't need the bank in the first place to tell them. So, like Chris said, it seems like they're just trying to get in the way, insert themselves into the middle, and there's really no need to do that. Once people find out about Bitcoin and how it can be used, and banks become kind of irrelevant.
Exit question. Will American banks read the report? Will it influence their thinking? Will they come around?
The only person who should create your private key to your Bitcoins is you, and you shouldn't be handing it over to anyone else. Don't pay the middleman.
Yeah, of course, what Chris is saying is true, but for people who aren't as technically savvy, yes, I hope that the U.S. does read the report and that the banks say we should get into this, if only for a year or however long the transition time it takes before people say, oh, wait, I don't need to pay 20% to the bank. I could just do it all myself and keep everything. I think I'll do that.
Well, we know for sure that the report will sit in a data center in Utah. Whether or not someone will ever read it is another question. I think maybe it will sit dormant until it's too late, and then someone will dig up those old records and read it in an effort to try to cover their tracks and show that they weren't responsible for whatever crisis they actually caused. I don't know. I mean, in all seriousness, I'm sure someone will read it. Whether or not they understand or do anything about it, I have no idea.
I think I'm going to email the report to one of my friends, and then the NSA will definitely read it, and then hopefully they'll talk about it.
Yes, and eventually.
Yes, so that would be interesting if they gave it a look. I don't really think they will. There's not really much of an incentive for them to really look into that, even though I think it would be good and it's necessary to have a transitional period just to get people in the mainstream more comfortable with adoption. But at the same time, I don't think it's really as necessary here, and I really don't think they're going to read it. I think they're thinking of ways to stop it, not really try to draw more attention to it here, at least.
Issue 3. Canada signs first ever official law regarding Bitcoin. Previously, Canada was taking a hands-off approach, waiting and seeing. But now they're backing that up with laws. The new Bitcoin law, the first of its kind, regulates Bitcoin as a money service business, does not define dealing in virtual currencies, requires the companies to register, forces foreign Bitcoin companies operating inside Canada to register, and prohibits banks from opening Bitcoin accounts if they fail to register. Is this law a step in the right direction?
It's a step in a direction. I think a lot of these governments took a very long time to form a view. That was probably the most pragmatic thing they could have done. Most governments only serve to maintain the status quo. That's what I believe their real intention is. I don't think that any of these regulations are going to have an impact longer term. I think it does help citizens to make more informed decisions.
No, I think this is a horrible decision by the Canadian government. It's just going to interfere. The hands-off approach was one of the things that I liked about them, and I would always reference Canada as a place that was safe for Bitcoin. No longer.
No.
Well, it's strange when they make new laws. I have not, read everything about it, but from a general macro perspective and stuff, it's like, well, Bitcoin, you can't be regulated, so you can regulate what happens on exchanges and stuff. So if you think of the exchanges as like a whole bunch of kids at a park with different tables where they're selling magic cards, there's a lot of the same cards being sold and stuff. And it wouldn't be absurd to have a security guard to stand by to make sure that nobody steals from those kids or that those kids don't steal all this stuff. So if we can get kind of close to that without having the security guard coming and taking people's cards and stuff and pushing the kids around, that's probably what we should try to engender and do.
Yeah, I think this is just obviously what you can expect from governments or bureaucracies, regulatory agencies. This is what they do. They're trying to figure out what their job is around cryptocurrency and how their work applies to it. And they're having a very hard time doing that because it doesn't need them. And they'll eventually figure this out, some of them, and they'll find better ways of spending their time on Earth for all of us, them and us. So it's just going to take more time. It looks like they're getting closer and closer to that understanding that, cryptocurrencies pretty much self-regulate pretty well.
No, this is a terrible, terrible decision, and but the good news is this technology is still really new and young, and now would be the best time for Bitcoiners to resist this kind of legislation.
Did you know? The Bitcoin Group is being broadcast live on worldcryptonetwork.com at worldcryptonetwork.com. Enough plugs. Moving on. Issue 4. U.S. prepares for sale of Bitcoin seized in Silk Road raid. The 12-hour window is open for you to submit your bids to the U.S. government. Get your auction paddles ready because it's bidding time. It's the government's very first time reselling bitcoins, and even the New York Times is calling the process opaque and slapdash and chiding the government for their lack of transparency and obvious CC/BCC mistakes, which, as reported on this network, led to the members of the mailing list communicating with each other, a fact that it was now featured in the New York Times and was first released by Shem Booth Spain in an exclusive World Crypto Network interview. Last chance for predictions. Will the bitcoins be sold above market rate? Will the market crash? Or will Bitcoin endure?
So this is the theft of the bitcoins off of the Silk Road server. I think that this information has already been priced into the market sentiment. I don't think that it's got any more movement down. We were kind of expecting this already. We'd say that today we have met Lynn Albrecht, Tom and I. You should definitely be supporting the Free Ross campaign. I hope that QR code is coming up big enough. If not, we'll put it in post. So this is a Bitcoin address. It's a vanity address, the one Ross Bitcoin. Please send him as much money as you can. 0.03 Bitcoin is what I'm recommending to everyone. If everybody at Porkfest did that, we'd easily reach our goal of 60 Bitcoins.
This whole seizure of the Silk Road Bitcoins has been a complete disaster from beginning to end. Of course, like any government thievery, they're planning on now auctioning off property that never belonged to them, has no authority to sell this. The bitcoins belong to other people, and now they're selling them. They couldn't even do that properly, and in secret or transparently couldn't do either well, and they deserve all the embarrassment that they're receiving now for their shameful actions. I think thanks to the internet and shows like these, people are able to see what the federal government is doing for what it really is.
I'm predicting that the auction is going to be disorganized and awkward, and it's going to be difficult to tell who would win, and then there's going to be a dispute over who actually won because something was mismanaged or misfiled or something. But ultimately, I think my prediction is going to be that once the auction is won and the winner is determined and it's time to send the Bitcoin, the government is going to hand input that address and put in a typo and orphan all of those Bitcoin.
It seems extremely plausible that they will make a typo and orphan all the Bitcoins. And that would be kind of fantastic. I mean, that would be that would be exciting. Just they're burned. Oh man, but yeah, the Silk Road. What went on there is they came and destroyed lives for purely political reasons. I was talking to Ross's mother the other day, and she's a parent, and I'm a parent. I have my own kid, and imagining him being in a cage for anything, much less the reasons that they're trying to stick on him, is absolutely horrifying. It's like a wake-walking nightmare. The entire community needs to come together and do everything that we can to help him, and we really need to take this seriously and get some wheels and do everything that we can.
Yeah, I think Roger Ver said that regardless of, Ross Albright's guilt or innocence, he's either a political prisoner or he's an innocent man who's in a cage. So that's the bottom line right there. So definitely support freeross.org. Look forward to Lynn Albright's talk here at PorkFest tomorrow morning. It's going to, I think, discuss the way that the legal defense team is crafting Ross's defense, which will be very interesting. So keep an eye out for that video from PorkFest, from the PorkFest folks. Other than that, yeah, I think, as Chris said, I think the market sentiment has the sale of these coins priced in already. It's going to be interesting what happens after. I kind of think everybody's kind of just waiting for it to be over, and then we'll start to see some more normal activity return, and the gradual rise continues.
The government's going to completely screw this up and keep screwing it up, and the focus needs to be redirected back to Ross Ulbricht, who is currently sitting in a cage. So I'm going to just echo my other panelists here. We need to do everything we can to support him and his family. Lynn will be speaking tomorrow here at PorkFest, and she's wonderful to talk to, and what they're going through is absolutely insane.
And now, predictions or story of the week. Chris J., are you ready with a prediction or a story of the week?
No, I'm not ready. It's okay. So I've had a really interesting time here in the States. I want to send a big thank you out to all the people that donated to make it possible for me to be here. I found it really, really interesting to meet people of differing views. This is the first time I've been around a group of people that have been open carrying with firearms. I had a very good conversation today with Josie Outlaw to talk about that. I might do a video with her tomorrow to discuss it a bit more. We don't have guns in the United Kingdom. Even the police aren't allowed to carry guns. And I think when we talk about this issue, when you look at it in the forum, it's very, very polarized, and people talk as if the law is there to represent moral exactitudes, as if the same rule can be applied the world over. Having listened to some of the arguments from people that have been carrying guns here, I am kind of persuaded that this is probably the right thing to do. I even think that open carry is better than concealing the firearm, because at least you know the intention of the person carrying it. And I have at no time felt under threat whilst I've been here. I never felt like anyone was about to shoot me. If someone's going to hurt you, they're going to hurt you anyway. That being said, I also don't think it's appropriate to legalise guns in the UK, because we just don't have it in our culture. We've had maybe 2 or 3 shootings in a school in the last 20 years. When it happened with the Duggan incident in 2011, we had riots that lasted for a week, and that was a very, very big deal. So I don't think it's baked into our DNA as a culture in the United Kingdom. But one of the things I would just finish up by saying is that I do feel like, now I've been around these new ideas in this different culture, I do feel a sense of lack of preparedness in the United Kingdom. Like, I don't have any laws that really give me the right to protect myself and defend myself in the event of lawlessness, which may well happen if there is an economic collapse. So it has given me pause for thought, and I hope to explore these issues in a future video.
The story of the week is that Chris Ellis is here all the way from the UK. It's very exciting that we are here together all in one place at PorkFest in New Hampshire. The coolest part about being here with all of these guys is not just interacting and seeing people face to face, but being able to transact in Bitcoin for everything I do. I've only had to use cash, I think, once at one vendor who wasn't set up with Bitcoin yet. But the question last year used to be, do you accept Bitcoin? And this year it's, do you accept Dogecoin? There are so many places that accept Bitcoin that I'm now asking about alternative currencies. There's even a vendor that accepts Darkcoin, which is really unique. I mean, that's a real stretch. And I bought some water today with Doge. It really happened. I couldn't believe it.
This has been sort of a longer trip than usual for me. Bitcoin Not Bombs was at Bitcoin in the Beltway last week, and then I came straight here to Porcupine Freedom Fest, which is sort of like the opposite Bitcoin festival as Washington, D.C. But I guess the story is I've been concerned about something I call trust communities, which is if you look at the Bitcoin Not Bombs booth here. It says, Bitcoin is a trustless system, but we trust you, shop all you like. And there's a QR code. So if we're out to lunch and you want to grab merch off our table and you're willing to pay for it, you can do that. And Bitcoin Porkfest is a place where you can do that. And for now, most Liberty events are places where you can do that. The early Bitcoin conferences were places that you could do that, and I'm by and large feeling like they aren't anymore. That there is a direct correlation between the statists that come into a Bitcoin conference and the degree at which security and loss prevention and theft is an issue at Bitcoin conferences. And I just want to sort of put that metaphor, or put that fact, actually it's not a metaphor, in people's minds that it's actually the ideology of the state that brings its own problems into a community. And if you can reject the regulators, and you can reject like the people that want to beg in Washington D.C. and beg their politicians for permission to use Bitcoin, and you can keep a sort of free and cooperative people that a trust community is sustainable, or at least it has been here for 11 years now. So I just want to put that in your pipe and smoke it.
I was talking at Bitcoin in the Beltway with these fine people, and it was a lot of fun. And on my way there, on the airplane, I just stood up and I held court and just was really loud, and like some people were annoyed, but I was like, everybody that can download this application, I'll give you $50 worth of an alternative currency. And usually about 7 people can do it. So I did it on my way to Washington, on my way back, and then the next day I flew to Philadelphia. I did it on my way there, and then I flew to Boston from Philadelphia, and I did it then, and I'm going to do it on my 2 legs back home. So if you can get about 7 people per time that you're pissing off 3 people, that's that I'll take those numbers.
I guess my story of the week, kind of something that flew under the radar, again, relating to the Bitcoin in the Beltway conference, which was lots of fun with a lot of you. It was great to meet Chris Ellis and Tom there for the first time in person, and of course to have them here. But there was someone else I was looking forward to meeting in D.C. who was prevented from coming to their speaking slot. Charlie Shrem. The infamous Charlie Shrem, founder of the Bitcoin Foundation and former CEO of BitInstant, one of the best and easiest ways to get Bitcoin throughout, the latter half of 2012 and most of 2013. He had approval to go and speak at the DC conference, and at the last minute, I think on the afternoon of Friday, that permission was revoked in a last-minute motion by the prosecution to prevent him from going and prevent him from speaking to people of his who are fans of his or are interested in his case or interested in what he has to say. So, a lot of people wanted to see him there and were expecting him there. And this is just kind of something I want to highlight. This is the behavior that we see from governments. If laws and regulations are meant to protect people or to punish people who are deserving of punishment, then why do they so often, like a petulant, frustrated parent, slap people on the wrist or on the head in this way who are already under their thumb? So it's just despicable, and it's just obvious that restoration or justice is really not the goal. So let's keep that in mind as we support people like Charlie, people like Ross Albright.
All right, so the good thing about going last is I can have a story of the week and a prediction. So usually I'm not prepared, but for me, the story of the week, it's been an excellent week in general. I organized my first conference ever with Bitcoin in the Beltway. The Bitcoin group has happened live twice now, which is amazing. I'm so happy to meet everyone in person, especially Chris, who came all the way over from London, it's amazing. It just shows that, the unity of the Bitcoin community when we want to help each other out. So that's just amazing. And then we're here at Porkfest, which is just you run into awesome. I don't know that I've been to even that many panels or talks because I've just been hanging out, having awesome discussions with people. And so my prediction for next year, there's only maybe 1 or 2 vendors that are holding out on taking Bitcoin. By next year, they're going to be taking Bitcoin.
Prediction. When I get home, I'm going to announce a zero-tolerance policy for anyone keeping more than 3 Bitcoins in an online exchange. I'm going to demand that every one of you learns how to secure your Bitcoins in an offline paper wallet. I've had enough stolen Bitcoins from good people, and I'm not going to accept it anymore. Zero tolerance. But we're out of time. Until next time, bye-bye.